Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 State of Security Operations video series. This video series will be covering insights from the CyberRes 2021 State of Security Operations report, which is available at cyberres.com/state of SecOps. Pulling from the experiences of 520 security operations executives and decision makers, the report offers implications and real insights to CISOs, CIOs, and other IT security leaders on how they can modernize their business, secure the digital value chain, and systematically address modern threats to achieve greater enterprise resiliency. This video series will dive deeper on some of the core topics, and we'll be interviewing contributors to the report. Our first guest is Stephan Jou, CTO of Security Analytics at Interset at CyberRes. Acquired by Micro Focus and CyberRes in 2019, Interset is an In-Q-Tel portfolio company that uses machine learning and behavioral analytics. Stephan leads both Interset and various analytics-related initiatives for Micro Focus and CyberRes. Previous to Interset, he was at IBM and Cognos, where he led the development of over 10 products in the areas of cloud computing, mobile, visualization, semantic search, data mining, and neural networks. Stephan holds a master's in computational neuroscience and biomedical engineering and a dual bachelor's in computer science and human physiology, all from the University of Toronto. He has held advisory positions on NSERC strategic networks and has been involved in setting goals for NSERC strategic research grant research topics in the areas of analytics and security for Canada. Thanks so much for joining us today, Stephan.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Preston.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Well, we're going to go ahead and kick things off. As I noted at the start, we're going to be exploring the 2021 State of Security Operations report, which Stephan contributed comments to and recommendations to SOCs. So to start things off, I'll just start at a high level and ask, what did you find most interesting about the report and what results most surprised you?
Right. It was interesting. One of the things that featured prominently throughout the report was, of course, the impact of COVID. And I sort of was expecting that the impact of COVID on security would be fairly universal. As a country, we're all impacted by the same thing. But the distribution of the top SecOps challenges in 2021, the report actually had this great breakdown by country. And actually, I was surprised at some of the variations from country to country. So the example that leapt out at me was the challenge of having too many unintegrated point solutions. And that feels like every country should have a problem with having too many integrated point solutions. We know how complex the security ecosystem can be. But I was surprised that, at one extreme, Germany was the only country that had a significant number of their reviewers include that as one of their top three concerns. They had 31% of their reviewers nominate unintegrated point solutions as a concern. But on the other hand, we had Italy that was the least concerned about that among all the other respondents, all of the other countries. And they were, I think, at something like 15%. So that surprised me. So that told me that even though we globally all suffered the same tragedy, there actually are geopolitical boundaries that have been drawn and that impacted every country differently. And of course, when you sort of think about that and think about the way different countries had different policies in place, and therefore there might have been different impacts and implications on the security system, I thought that was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was very interesting going through the results of the survey, and yeah, seeing where countries were different, and then where they were aligned. Like some things, it was interesting to see across the board everyone struggled with, and then other areas, there was just very different reactions essentially to COVID and changes there. So thank you.
Very simple.
So obviously one of the big topics of the report, which we've already hinted at, was how security operations has transformed due to its own normal continuing evolution, as happens year after year, as well as the drastic transformation that came about due to COVID-19. So what are some of the biggest changes you've seen, and how do you expect them to impact security operations teams and security analytics going forward?
Yeah, biggest changes. I was actually really impressed at the amount of adoption of technology in general. In the survey, it basically confirms this with a huge number of the respondents, nearly 80%, basically talking about an increase in investment in security technologies. And I found that really promising because that has a huge impact on both security operations teams and security analytics going forward. When I think about the shift from digital technologies and moving in general from meat space to cyberspace, obviously that makes a lot of sense, right? We all started working from home. We couldn't have in-person meetings or interactions. So we basically transitioned to a much greater reliance on digital systems. And sometimes, that was directly related to a security technology, but sometimes not, But either way, whether it's directly related to security technology or not, we know that it does two things for us. One, by shifting to more digital technologies, we generate more data, right? And the more data that we have, the more analytical opportunities that we have in addition. Like, it doesn't matter how good your math is. If you don't have a good, healthy set of data to analyze, basically security analytics is stuck, right? So by generating more data, because we've shifted to an increase in technologies in general, that is huge for security analytics because we've got more opportunity to analyze. The second trend that is important to this is basically creating more connections and pathways and layers for the data. By having more security technologies, by having more layers of access control, by having more monitoring solutions, for example, we're basically creating more opportunities for zero trust systems to be implemented. So we have all these different layers, we have all these connection points, we're building all these digital trails, but that's great because now we can build in these control points, these monitoring points to help make our systems safer. So that was essentially the trend that I love seeing, this nearly 80% of people adopting technology, because that's just huge for everyone.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's very interesting. And one of your focus areas and Interset's focus areas is behavioral analytics. And I'm curious, how has that shift to remote work impacted behavioral analytics?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Like, I always knew that we were, as a solution, theoretically robust to changes in work environment. That's the whole point of anomaly detection. We don't make any assumptions as to what normal behavior looks like. We're just trying to detect changes. So it was really reassuring for me to see that bear out as the world pivoted to become more resilient to just working in this new reality that we had. So there are two things that leapt out to me. One is that the identity and access control systems have proven to be remarkably important for monitoring and analytics. Of course, now that we're all working from home and instead of working at the office, that's been a dramatic change. But all of the access control systems, they basically remain in place and they remain effective, right? You still need to access that critical infrastructure system. You still need to move data. You still need to go through access control in order to get access to that data. You still need to prove your identity to make sure that you are the right person who requires access to that information. So all of that still applies. And therefore, all the systems, including the behavioral analytics systems that we had built on top of, say, IAM data, they all just continue to work. So that was one observation that I had that made me feel really good. The second observation I had is that it was so important to have peer comparison baselines. And let me explain that further. So a lot of what we do when we do anomaly detection is we compare you to your past behavior. And that's super important. I'm not trying to reduce the importance of that, but you can't just have historical baselines by itself. You also need this notion of comparing you to others, comparing you to your peers, comparing you to others like you. And that's important because if you think about the entire world moving from working in the office to moving online, if all we did is compare you to what you behaved in the past, then you just get a ton of red showing up in your dashboards, right? And basically everyone would look anomalous. But because we have the ability to compare you to others like you, because everyone like you also work from home, that greatly reduced the noise of our system. So those were two things that I noticed that actually ended up being a very positive confirmation of our approach for behavioral analytics.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, another one of the major topics from the report was the growing use of threat intelligence.
Mhm.
So why do you think threat intelligence is so important to security analytics, and what recommendations would you have for an organization that hasn't yet embraced that practice?
Yeah, very pragmatic. If you don't have any threat intelligence provider today, pick anyone. Like going from 0 to 1 is a huge difference, and much more than going from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3. The interesting thing is that there have been studies, academic studies, that have shown that there's actually surprisingly little overlap between the various threat intelligence providers, but they all provide value. So just pick one and go for it. Don't overthink it. But it is still important. And the reason it's important is because it adds context to your downstream systems. So whether it's a SIM or whether it's a behavior analytics system, whether it's a reporting system, having that additional information to give your teams additional context around the IP address that you're looking at, the traffic that you're trying to nail down, the potential threat actors involved, just so important to actually being able to interpret and take action on the results that you're seeing.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, we just published a white paper. I don't think I've mentioned this to you before, but we published a white paper about threat intelligence, and one of the free threat intelligence platforms out there is MISP, which ArcSight Cyber is integrates well with, and that MISP platform had, for example, with some of the big stuff in the past year, like COVID-19 related threats, and then the SolarWinds sunburst attack.
Right.
Within 24 hours, those platforms had indicators of compromise
Fantastic.
uploaded, just so you could have that day one protection. And again, that's a free to access threat intelligence platform. So great,
Very
thank you.
cool.
So the report also discussed the growing importance of a unified security data lake by survey respondents. 58% marked that they currently use unified security data lake. 39% are planning to acquire one, which was the highest among respondents for the different technologies there. So what are your thoughts about that finding? Was it surprising to you, and what do you think it means for SOCs going forward?
I was so happy. I was so happy to see that there was a recognition that having this unified security data lake was so important, right? I mean, 58% currently have a unified security data lake. That is fantastic. To be honest, that's higher than I thought. And then of the remaining 40%, for 39% of that to have planned to acquire a unified security data lake, I was so thrilled. And of course, the reason is because I'm such a fan of analytics. I'm a fan of AI. I'm a fan of machine learning, as you know. But without clean data, without normalized data, then the best math in the world, as I said earlier, just isn't effective. And so my tip here is absolutely to continue investing in your unified security data lake, but to pay attention to normalizing the data. If you can make sure, for example, just basic data hygiene, like try and have a standard way to identify a user, right? And we know that data from Active Directory sometimes, for example, can be quite noisy, but doing simple things like making sure the domain is either in or out, making sure that you consistently case usernames, making sure that you at least have a way to identify the same human being regardless of the data source. Like maybe they're identified one way in AD, but a different way when coming in from, say, source code log files, right? Mm-hmm. So basic stuff like that has an exponential impact on the efficacy of your rules, your reports, your analytics, all downstream. So it's well worth paying attention to normalize. Don't just collect the data, try and clean it up as you go. You don't need to get it all 100% perfect on day one, but making incremental progress will pay dividends in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate having you on here. It's always an honor to speak with you. Always a pleasure. Yeah, really appreciate it for the audience. If you'd like to learn more about the state of security operations, again, we have a link to the report down below, and it's cyberres.com/state of SecOps. And then keep an eye out for our next episode. Go ahead and subscribe. You'll get a notification as soon as that next episode is published. We'll be having one of these episodes every week. So again, thanks everyone for attending. Thank you again, Stephan, and I hope you all have a great day.